One of the main focuses in ultralight backpacking is to have the perfect piece of gear to match the conditions and type of trip. This can often get expensive and you'll end up with many highly specific pieces of gear in the same equipment category. The Liteway PyraOmm tent is a unique piece of gear that attempts to solve this problem by way of modularity. Being a pyramid tent, it has the purpose of separating the outer and the inner so you can modulate it depending on the kind of trip based on the kind of weather that you're experiencing. This jack-of-all-trades strategy is great for the budget-conscious hiker that is not fussed about having the absolute perfect tent, but instead is satisfied with good enough, knowing this tent will perform across many different product categories. James here with Arrow Hiking, and this is the review of the Liteway PyraOmm Plus tent. This is going to be broken down into the three categories of specifications and setup, livability, and weather performance. So when we're looking at specifications, Liteway's PyraOmm is a rectangular pyramid tent with a single peak, dual entrance, dual peak vent, 2 to 3 person shelter for below tree line. This material here is a 20 denier ripstop silicon coated polyester. It's a 1.1 ounce per square yard, which equates to 37 grams per square meter. This is a very thin material. So the polyester fibers don't absorb water like nylon does. So this is different material to your typical standard or traditional tents. It means it's going to sag less when it's wet, and it's going to have quite a high UV resistance compared to nylon. What this means in the field is I don't have to jump out in the middle of the night or after it started raining, retension guy lines, or worry about leaving the tent up when I'm peak bagging or whatever else I'm doing while the tent's set up during the day. This tent will need seam sealing. I have seam sealed it on the inside here. This is just to make it look nice and clean on the outside. Unfortunately, Liteway doesn't actually provide a seam sealing service, but it's not a big deal. It took me a day and it was fine. We use no-seam mesh for both the single and solid inner, and the peak vents up the top are both covered with a no-seam mesh as well. Bugs are still going to get in down the bottom, but it does help. We have 8 stakeout points on the side. We have 4 in each corner. This is where most of your tension is going to be, so make sure you've got some nice strong pegs here. We have another one in the middle, and that's going to equal 8 around the outside. One of the stakeout points is over here, and this is going to be for the door, so I would recommend bringing stakes for that. You're also going to see another additional 8 stakeout points in the center point of the tarp. So we have one in the middle of these giant panels and then on each of the corners. I would prefer to see these a lot higher up. These don't really do much to stabilize the tent, but much rather just pull the material out and give you more livability inside. We also have a line lock at the very top if you really want to try and stabilize this tent, or if you're hanging it from a tree and you don't need the center pole inside. So this tent is 276 centimeters wide. This is the side, or both sides, where you're going to have your YKK AquaGuard number 3 zip, and then it's going to be 200 centimeters long. This is a really big, roomy tent. It's a palace for one person, and you have a lot of room in here for 2 people. It's 160 centimeters tall. What this means is that your typical trekking poles are going to have to be lashed together with some straps, or you're going to need a significant pole jack. My carbon pole jack's about 30 centimeters long, which is much bigger than other tents. Now, Liteway advertises this tent as a 3-person tent. You could technically fit 3 people in here. It's going to be a bit difficult with this center pole, so you'd probably have to either A-frame it or just limit this to a 2-person shelter. When I use this as a 1-person shelter, I feel like there is so much space. I can see in here that I have my bathtub floor. I have so much space, and I can kick everything to one side. I can cook in a massive vestibule, and I can really lay out all my stuff and not worry about touching the sides of the tent. This is why condensation for me isn't really a big issue in this tent, just because of the amount of space that this tent provides. You're never really going to get so close to the edge that you're going to brush off and get condensation on you. So in terms of the half mesh inner, it's set up with no clips and you don't need any additional stakes. There's going to be 4 clips on each corner, and there's also going to be a clip in the middle of each panel so that you can clip it to the sides. What you're going to find is that with the half mesh inner, there is enough space for 1 person, and then half of the tent is then transformed into a really big vestibule. When you attach the full mesh inner, this is where the tent transforms into one big tent. You're not going to have much vestibule space, I'll talk about that a little bit later, but instead the entire tent turns into a double-walled mesh shelter. I used this on the overland track when I was sharing it with a friend. We separated the fly and the inner, and it weighed about 600 and 500 grams each, and we had lots of room to store our stuff inside the tent. When it rained, we didn't have to worry about anything being left outside, and we didn't have to worry about bugs. With the full mesh inner, I would not recommend cooking inside. I find this tent to be a little bit flimsy, and I would worry about tipping over something and burning the entire tent. I also feel that while there isn't a vestibule, there is enough space to store dirty shoes and some small items between the fly and the mesh inner. I kind of stuck it on the inside. I wouldn't really put a backpack there, but it is enough space to stick dirty shoes and some small items. So when looking at weather performance in this tent, this is where I voice my main concerns. This tent does not do well in wind. We have a very, very slight breeze, and you can already see the tent start to deform, and you can see the panels really billowing inwards. Like, look at that. And it's just a very slight breeze. So this is why I say don't take this tent above tree line. Don't take this tent in above 30 kilometers per hour wind. It won't do very well there. In combination with that, you can see we have very aggressive cat cuts. If I uncrank this skyline, you can see that it does allow a lot of wind to come in underneath the tent. This is great in 3 season when you're trying to reduce condensation, but when you're trying to block out snow, when you're trying to block out driving rain, it's not going to do that well. We can see that when we do pull this down, it starts to change the shape of the tent, and it doesn't do well in terms of wind resistance and general stability. The guy lines, like I mentioned earlier, I feel that they're too low down. They don't really do anything to stabilize the trekking pole in the center. All they really do is just pull the panel out, give you a bit more space inside. I've had to bail on camps above tree line because the tent was just deforming in so much and it would have broke. So to conclude this review, I'm going to talk about a couple pros and a couple cons, and then we're going to talk about who would benefit most from this tent. In terms of pros, the main benefit of this kind of tent is going to be the modularity. Being able to use it like I have now with just a bathtub ground sheet, or being able to pair a full or half inner, is going to make this tent very versatile for 95% of all 3 season type of camping. If you're happy with taking on a little bit of extra weight, I would say go for this tent. It's really good. You're going to have a lot of room, and you're going to enjoy camping, having a lot of space, not feeling cramped inside, and being able to choose which kind of tent system you want for whatever kind of weather and backpacking trip you're going on. One of the last main pros of this tent is just general pyramid tent structure. You're going to set it up with 4 stakes, put your trekking pole in, and boom, you're out of the weather, you're out of the rain, and you can get changed, and then you can think about what to do once you're out of the wind. So in terms of cons, there's 2 main cons that I would talk about here. The first is that the weight is going to be heavier than your really specific kinds of ultralight tents, but that comes with the pro of being so modular. You're going to be carrying maybe 200 to 400 extra grams compared to a very specific tent, but that could be a welcome trade-off if you're looking for one tent that can do most of what you want to do. The second big issue that I want to talk about here is just your lack of wind resistance. This tent does not make you feel secure inside. It makes you want to bail and head down below the tree line and get out of the wind. If you're looking for a tent that is a lot more storm-worthy, you could have a look at your Durston X-Mids, or you could even have a look at some other type of pyramid tents like your Mountain Laurel Designs, your Hyperlight Mountain Gear, or even your Locust Gear from Japan. The Liteway PyraOmm, and other modular tents for that matter, will never be the best and lightest tent of any product category. But that's the point, they're meant to be modular, not super lightweight. Looking at the graph, we can see that there is a tent for every purpose in the ultralight category that will be lighter, more storm-worthy, and more purposeful than the PyraOmm. But that's going to be at the cost of modularity and the dollar value. The PyraOmm costs 697 euros, which is 1,240 Australian dollars or 792 USD. This is already excluding shipping and any import fees you might have. It's certainly not the cheapest option out there, but for the versatility of the tent and being able to do what other tents cannot, it's actually pretty good value when you break down what you're getting for this money. This tent, I would contend, is for those that are looking into purposeful gear and want to reduce their pack weight without owning numerous tents. It's a thoughtful middle ground as a shelter that you can adapt, not replace, as your hiking style and environments change. With a spacious design, integral pitch, and flexible inner floor options, the PyraOmm becomes a tool that supports your hiking rather than overcomplicating it. So this has been my review of the Liteway PyraOmm Plus 3-person tent. This is James from Arrow Hiking, and I hope you have enjoyed this video.